The first mistake the Varkesh fleet made was assuming the human ship was alone. The second mistake was scanning it. Admiral Kale Vorn stood silently on the bridge of the Varkesh flagship, watching the strange vessel drift across the tactical display. It had appeared without warning at the edge of the Arcturus passage. No escort, no support ships, no visible weapons fire, just one human warship. The vessel was unlike anything the Varkesh had encountered before. It was enormous, nearly 9 kilometers long, with a dark metallic hull broken by layers of angular armor. Blue-white lights glowed along its spine, while 4 massive engine structures burned with a steady, controlled radiance. It did not maneuver. It did not transmit a threat. It simply waited. Human vessel, the communications officer reported. No identification code. Admiral Vorn narrowed his eyes. Transmit a demand. A message crossed the void. Varkesh Imperial Fleet. Identify yourself. There was no response. The bridge remained silent. Then the sensor officer spoke. Admiral. Vorn looked toward him. Scan it. The officer hesitated. Full spectrum. Everything. The order was executed. The Varkesh flagship scanners swept across the human vessel. Mass, armor composition, power generation, weapons, shield density, engine output. Everything was measured. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the sensor display began filling with warnings. The officer froze. Admiral, what? I think the scanner is malfunctioning. Run it again. The scan repeated. The same results appeared. Then more warnings. The officer's hands began trembling. Impossible. Vorn stepped toward the console. What did you find? The officer swallowed. The hull is layered. So? Not conventional armor. He enlarged the scan. Each layer is independent. Vorn stared at the holographic model. How many? The officer didn't answer immediately. 312. Several officers turned. That is impossible, one whispered. The sensor officer continued. There are additional internal layers. Some appear to be empty space. Others what? They don't register as matter. Vorn frowned. Then what are they? I don't know. The scan continued. Suddenly another warning appeared. The bridge lights flickered. The sensor officer jumped back. Admiral, what now? The ship just detected our scan. Vorn's expression hardened. Of course it did. That's not the problem. Then what is? The officer pointed toward the display. It scanned us back. Silence. A moment later, the tactical hologram changed. The human vessel had analyzed the entire Varkesh fleet. Every cruiser, every destroyer, every weapons platform, every fighter squadron. The human ship had identified them all in less than 2 seconds. Then something appeared on the Varkesh tactical display. A single line of text. Threat assessment complete. The bridge went completely silent. Vorn stared at the message. They scanned our entire fleet. Yes, Admiral. How long? 2 seconds. That is impossible. The sensor officer looked terrified. Admiral, what? There is something else. He enlarged another section of the scan. A second message appeared. Warning. Fleet composition recognized. Vorn's stomach tightened. Recognized. The officer nodded slowly. They know what our ships are. That's not surprising. No, Admiral. The officer's voice dropped. They know how to destroy them. Before anyone could respond, every Varkesh ship received the same transmission. No voice. No threat, just coordinates. One location, the exact coordinates of the Varkesh flagship. Then a final message appeared. Leave human space. Vorn stared at it. For the first time in 300 years, the Varkesh Empire had encountered something that did not fear them. But fear was not yet what the Admiral felt. He felt something worse. Uncertainty. Because the human ship had not activated its weapons. It had not raised its shields. It had not moved. It had simply scanned them. And somehow, that was enough to make the entire fleet panic. The Varkesh fleet had faced enemies far more numerous than itself. It had fought civilizations with larger weapons, stronger shields, and faster ships. It had never panicked. Not like this. Across 37 warships, officers stared at the same message. Leave human space. Nobody understood why the message frightened them. The human vessel had not fired. It had not even moved. Yet Admiral Cale Vorn could feel something changing across his fleet. "Status report," he ordered. The communications officer answered first. "All ships are receiving the transmission. Any hostile activity? None. Weapons? Powered down. Shields? Normal." Vorn exhaled. "Then why is everyone acting like we're under attack?" Nobody answered. Then the sensor officer spoke. "Because we aren't looking at the human ship anymore." Vorn turned. "What?" The officer pointed toward the tactical display. The ship disappeared. Vorn stared at the screen. The massive human warship was gone. No jump signature. No engine flare. No distortion. Nothing. 1 second it had been there. The next, empty space. "Find it." The sensor teams immediately began searching. Long-range scanners activated. Gravitational sensors swept the region. Thermal sensors searched for engine emissions. Nothing. The human ship had vanished. Then the fleet received another transmission. This time it wasn't a warning. It was a list. 37 entries. Every Varkesh ship was listed by name. Beside each ship was a number. Structural weakness, 4.7%. Shield failure probability, 91.2%. Engine critical point identified. The bridge went silent. Vorn's face hardened. "Delete it." The communications officer tried. "It's not stored locally, Admiral." "Then block the transmission." "We can't." "Why?" "Because it's not being transmitted anymore." Vorn froze. The officer slowly turned toward him. "The information is already inside our systems." Vorn's blood ran cold. "How?" "We don't know." Suddenly alarms erupted. The fleet's tactical network began shutting down one section at a time. Not exploding. Not being hacked in the traditional sense. Simply losing access. Navigation disappeared. Then targeting. Then fleet coordination. Then encrypted communications. One by one, the Varkesh fleet was becoming blind. "Emergency network!" Vorn shouted. "Activating." Nothing happened. "Secondary network. Offline. Manual communication. Blocked." Vorn slammed his fist against the command console. "What did that ship do?" The sensor officer stared at his display. "I don't think it attacked us." Vorn turned sharply. "Then explain this." The officer pointed toward the tactical network. "It mapped us." "What does that mean?" "It means the human ship didn't need to break into our systems." He swallowed. "It found the connections between them." Vorn stared at him. The officer continued. "Our fleet network is designed like a fortress. Thousands of encrypted channels. Independent command systems. Backup relays." He looked toward the disappearing tactical displays. "But every fortress has a map." The admiral understood. The human ship hadn't hacked the fortress. It had discovered the blueprint. Then another officer shouted. "Admiral!" "What?" "We have movement." Every remaining display switched to external sensors. First there was nothing. Then a faint distortion appeared behind the fleet. 1, 2, 5, then dozens. The human warship had returned. But it wasn't alone. Vorn stared at the display. "Impossible." The sensor officer shook his head. "No." There was something strange about the new contacts. They weren't ships. They were projections. Decoys. Hundreds of them. Human warships appeared throughout the battlefield, surrounding the Varkesh fleet from every direction. The Varkesh commanders immediately began issuing contradictory orders. "Enemy fleet to the east." "No, they're behind us." "Multiple ships approaching from above." "Admiral, we're surrounded." Vorn shouted over the chaos. "Stop!" The bridge went silent. He stared at the tactical display. Something didn't make sense. If the humans wanted to destroy them, they already had the advantage. Why create illusions? Why reveal their position? Then Vorn noticed something. The decoy ships weren't moving randomly. They were positioning themselves around specific Varkesh vessels. The weakest ships, the command ships, the ammunition carriers, the fleet's communication relays, every important target. Vorn's expression changed. They're not surrounding us. The sensor officer looked at him. They're hurting us. A new transmission appeared. This time it contained only one sentence. You have 3 minutes to leave. Vorn looked at the countdown. 2 minutes, 59 seconds. For the first time, the Varkesh admiral understood the truth. The humans weren't demonstrating their strength. They were demonstrating restraint. And if the fleet refused to leave, the next scan would not be a warning. It would be a firing solution. 2 minutes and 53 seconds. That was how long the Varkesh fleet had left. Admiral Kale Vorn stared at the countdown hanging above the tactical display. No one spoke. 37 warships surrounded by hundreds of human signatures. At least that was what their sensors claimed. Verify the contacts, Vorn ordered. The sensor officer's hands moved rapidly across the console. Already trying. Results. Most aren't real. Vorn looked at him. Most. The officer hesitated. We've identified 86% as false sensor reflections. And the remaining 14%? We can't confirm. A chill moved through the bridge. Because 14% of hundreds was still enough to represent a terrifying number of real ships. Vorn looked at the communications officer. Open a channel to the human vessel. The officer nodded. A connection formed. For several seconds, there was only static. Then a calm human voice filled the bridge. This is Captain Elias Ward of the HSS Resolute. Vorn's eyes narrowed. Captain Ward, your vessel has entered restricted Varkesh military territory. A pause. No. Vorn frowned. What? We entered human territory. The admiral's jaw tightened. This passage has belonged to the Varkesh Empire for 70 years. And humanity disagrees. You are surrounded. Captain Ward's voice remained completely calm. So are you. Several officers exchanged nervous glances. Vorn continued. You have one ship. We have one ship here. The distinction made the admiral uncomfortable. You're threatening an imperial fleet. No. Ward paused. We're giving you an opportunity to leave. Vorn looked at the countdown. 2 minutes and 20 seconds. You expect the Varkesh Empire to retreat because one human vessel told us to? No. Ward's answer came instantly. We expect you to retreat because we showed you what happens if you don't. The transmission ended. Silence returned. Vorn stared at the empty communication channel. Then the fleet commander spoke. Admiral, we should attack. Vorn turned. Explain. The human ship is alone. Whatever technology it possesses, 37 warships can overwhelm one target. Vorn looked toward the tactical display. Can we? The commander hesitated. Of course. Then target it. The fleet's weapons officers immediately began locking onto the last known position of the HSS Resolute. Missile batteries armed. Plasma cannons charged. Particle lances came online. For the first time, the Varkesh fleet prepared to fire. Then every weapon console turned red. Targeting failure. The weapons officers froze. What happened? Target lock lost. Restore it. We can't. Vorn's eyes narrowed. Find the ship manually. The sensor officer shook his head. There's nothing there. What do you mean? The human vessel isn't transmitting an active signature. Then how did we see it? I don't know. The tactical display suddenly changed. A new image appeared. The HSS Resolute was now visible directly ahead. The fleet's weapons immediately locked. Then the image changed again. The ship appeared behind them, then above, then below, then between the fleet's formations. The Varkesh commanders began shouting. Which one is real? Nobody knew. The countdown continued. 131. Vorn finally understood. The humans weren't hiding their ship. They were making the Varkesh fleet incapable of knowing where it was. "Stop firing," he ordered. The weapons officer looked confused. "But, Admiral..." "Stop." The weapons powered down. Then something appeared on the main display. A single red point. It wasn't one of the decoys. It wasn't a sensor reflection. It was the real HSS Resolute. The human warship had positioned itself directly behind the Varkesh flagship. At point-blank weapons range. The entire bridge froze. How did it get there? Nobody answered. Vorn stared at the ship. Its enormous armored hull remained completely still. No weapons visible. No fighters launching. No shields glowing. It simply watched them. Then the human vessel transmitted again. 1 minute. The fleet commander whispered. "Admiral." Vorn didn't respond. Another transmission appeared. This time coordinates followed. The coordinates weren't for the fleet. They pointed to empty space nearly 40,000 kilometers away. Vorn's tactical officer analyzed them. "Admiral." "What?" "That location contains something." "Explain." "We're detecting a gravitational anomaly." Vorn's expression changed. "Is it natural?" "No." The officer enlarged the reading. "It's artificial." A silence fell across the bridge. Then the sensor officer whispered the words nobody wanted to hear. "There's another human ship there." Vorn turned. "One." The officer's face had gone pale. "No, Admiral." He zoomed the image. "Hundreds." The countdown reached 30 seconds. Across the fleet, every Varkesh commander finally understood the truth. The human warship they had scanned had never been the threat. It had been the warning. The real human fleet had been waiting somewhere else. And now, they were waking up. The countdown reached 0. Nothing happened. For 3 full seconds, the Varkesh fleet waited for the attack. Missiles did not launch. Plasma weapons did not fire. The stars remained silent. Then the tactical display went completely black. Every Varkesh warship lost external sensors simultaneously. "Report. We've lost the fleet network. Navigation is offline. Long-range communications are dead. Admiral, we're blind." Kale Vorn stood motionless. He had expected destruction. Instead, humanity had taken away the one thing the Varkesh needed most. Information. Then a new image appeared on the bridge display. It was not a tactical map. It was a recording. A human officer stood inside a command room. Captain Elias Ward. Behind him, enormous windows revealed something that made every Varkesh officer stop breathing. A fleet. Not dozens of ships. Not hundreds. Thousands. Human warships stretched across the darkness in perfect formation. Dreadnoughts. Carriers. Cruisers. Destroyers. Ships larger than anything the Varkesh Empire had ever constructed. And at the center stood 3 colossal vessels. Their hulls were almost impossible to comprehend. Each one was more than 20 kilometers long. The Varkesh fleet commander whispered, "Those ships." Vorn looked at him. "What?" "They weren't on any human registry." The admiral's eyes narrowed. "What registry?" "We have spent 80 years monitoring humanity." The commander stared at the screen. "These ships don't exist." Captain Ward's recorded image continued. "We warned you." The video paused. Then another image appeared. It showed the Varkesh fleet from above. Every ship was highlighted. Every weakness. Every vulnerable engine. Every command relay. Every ammunition storage system. The humans had mapped everything. Then the image changed. A red circle appeared around the Varkesh flagship. A second circle appeared around the fleet's primary communication ship. Then another around the ammunition carrier. Then another. The entire Varkesh fleet was covered in targeting markers. Vorn felt his throat tighten. "How long?" The sensor officer looked at him. "Admiral, how long have they had these firing solutions?" The officer checked the encrypted data. Then his expression changed. "Since before we arrived." The bridge became silent. The Varkesh had not entered human territory unnoticed. They had been expected. The human warship had not discovered them. It had been waiting. Vorn turned toward the communications officer. Open a channel. A connection appeared. Captain Ward's face returned. You have our attention, Vorn said. Ward nodded. You have ours. You knew we were coming. Yes. How? Ward leaned back slightly. Your fleet entered the passage 6 hours ago. Vorn frowned. We were cloaked. I know. You detected a cloaked fleet? No. Ward paused. We detected the distortion caused by your cloaking system. Vorn's expression hardened. Our cloaking technology is invisible to every sensor in the galaxy. Ward smiled faintly. Your sensors. The word struck harder than any weapon. Vorn understood. Humanity had developed an entirely different way of seeing the battlefield. Not better sensors. Better understanding. Why didn't you attack us? Vorn asked. Ward's expression became serious. Because you haven't fired. We could. You could have. Then why are you giving us another chance? Ward looked directly into the camera. Because humanity doesn't want your empire. Vorn frowned. You could destroy our fleet. Yes. You could cripple the Varkesh military. Yes. You could invade our territory. Ward nodded. We could. Then why? For the first time, the human captain's voice became colder. Because we're not the Varkesh. Nobody on the bridge moved. Ward continued. We don't conquer civilizations because we can. The transmission suddenly changed. A new tactical image appeared. The thousands of human warships began moving. Not toward the Varkesh. Away from them. The fleet separated into perfectly coordinated formations. The massive dreadnoughts moved first. Then the carriers. Then the cruisers. Within seconds, the human armada had formed a corridor through the stars. A clear path. An escape route. Vorn stared at it. You're letting us leave. Yes. After humiliating the entire Imperial fleet? Ward shook his head. No. He paused. We're teaching you something. What? Next time you scan a human warship. Ward leaned closer to the camera. Ask yourself why it allowed you to. The transmission ended. The Varkesh bridge remained silent. Then the sensor officer suddenly shouted. Admiral! Vorn turned. What now? The officer looked terrified. I'm receiving another signal. From the human fleet? No. Then who? The officer enlarged the signal. It is coming from inside our fleet. Vorn froze. Impossible. The officer shook his head. It isn't a human transmission. He looked toward the admiral. It's Imperial. A new message appeared across the tactical screen. Priority Omega. Authentication confirmed. Vorn's face went pale. That code had only been used 3 times in Varkesh history. And every time it meant one thing. Someone inside the Empire had ordered the fleet to attack humanity. The admiral stared at the message. Then another line appeared. Attack authorization. Active. Vorn slowly turned toward the fleet commander. Who gave that order? Before the commander could answer, every human warship in the distant fleet stopped moving. Thousands of ships turned simultaneously, and for the first time, their weapons began charging. The first human weapons began charging. Across the darkness, thousands of ships changed formation. Blue-white energy gathered along their hulls. Massive weapon arrays opened. Dreadnoughts rotated slowly, revealing enormous spinal cannons. The Varkesh fleet watched in silence. Nobody needed to ask what was happening. Humanity had finally stopped pretending this was a negotiation. Admiral Kale Vorn stared at the message on his command display. Attack authorization. Active. Who issued that order? He demanded. The fleet commander checked the authentication code. His face became pale. Admiral, answer me. The order originated from Imperial High Command. Vorn's eyes narrowed. That is impossible. Why? Because High Command cannot authorize an attack without the Emperor's approval. The commander looked down. The Emperor approved it. Silence. Vorn felt something cold settle inside him. Contact the Imperial Palace. The communications officer tried. No response. Again. Nothing. Emergency channel. Still nothing. Vorn's expression changed. Someone has sealed the Imperial Communications Network. The fleet commander stepped closer. Admiral, perhaps the Emperor is all ready. Don't speculate. Vorn looked toward the human fleet. Thousands of weapons were now fully charged. But they still hadn't fired. That confused him more than anything else. Why are they waiting? The sensor officer answered quietly. They're waiting for us. Vorn stared at him. For what? Permission to shoot. The Admiral understood immediately. Humanity had detected the Imperial attack authorization. They knew the order existed, but they weren't going to fire first. They were giving the Varkesh fleet one final choice. Then the communication system activated. Captain Elias Ward appeared. His expression was no longer calm. You've received the order. Vorn nodded. Yes. Do you intend to obey it? The Admiral looked toward the fleet. 37 warships. Millions of soldiers. Billions of credits in military hardware. An empire that had never lost a major battle. Then he looked toward the human armada. Thousands of warships. Technology that could dismantle his fleet without firing. He knew the answer. No. Ward remained silent for several seconds. Then he asked, why? Because I command the fleet. And I will not sacrifice 37 ships because someone sitting thousands of light years away wants a war. Ward nodded. That is the correct answer. Suddenly, an alarm erupted. The Varkesh flagship shook. What happened? The bridge crew rushed to their stations. Unknown energy spike. From where? Inside the fleet. The tactical display showed a sudden explosion. One of the Varkesh destroyers had erupted. Not from an external attack. From within. Another explosion followed. Then another. 3 ships. Then 5. Then 8. Vorn's eyes widened. Sabotage. The fleet commander checked the internal systems. It's happening across the fleet. Who? We don't know. Then a horrifying possibility appeared. Vorn looked toward the communications officer. Could the Imperial Command have installed something? The officer's face turned white. Admiral. He opened an encrypted maintenance file. There are dormant systems inside our ships. What kind? Command override modules. Vorn stared at him. Installed by whom? Imperial Security Directorate. The Admiral's blood ran cold. The Imperial government had placed hidden controls inside its own fleet. And now someone was activating them. Suddenly, every Varkesh ship received a new order. Fire on human targets. The fleet commander shouted. Admiral. Vorn grabbed the command console. Lock all weapons. Already trying. Manual override. Blocked. The ships began turning toward the human armada. One after another. Their weapons activated automatically. Vorn watched in horror. The Varkesh fleet was being forced to attack. Cut power to the weapons. We can't. Then shut down the ships. Admiral. The command systems are locked. The first Varkesh battleship fired. A massive plasma beam crossed the darkness. It struck the nearest human dreadnought. For one terrifying moment, everyone expected the human ship to explode. Didn't. The beam disappeared against its shields. The dreadnought didn't even move. Then every human weapon stopped charging. Captain Ward's voice returned. Admiral Vorn. Vorn looked at the screen. Ward's expression was cold. You told us you wouldn't attack. We're being forced. I know. You know? We detected the override signals before your ships fired. Vorn stared at him. Then why aren't you attacking? Ward looked toward the tactical display. Because we know who the real enemy is. The human fleet suddenly changed direction. Not toward the Varkesh warships. Toward the source of the Imperial command signal. A hidden transmission point appeared on the map. Far beyond the battlefield. Inside Varkesh territory. Ward spoke one final sentence. Your fleet isn't our target. The coordinates expanded. Your government is. The transmission ended. Vorn stared at the location. For the first time, he understood the true scale of the situation. The human warship had scanned his fleet. Then the fleet panicked. But humanity had never been preparing to destroy the fleet. They had been preparing to find whoever was controlling it. And now they knew exactly where to strike. The coordinates remained frozen above the Varkesh command table. Nobody spoke. The location was impossible. Admiral Cale Vorn stared at the red marker. It wasn't an enemy base. It wasn't a military outpost. It wasn't even near the battlefield. It was the Imperial Command Citadel, the most heavily protected facility in the entire Varkesh Empire. The place where military orders were issued. The place where fleet movements were coordinated. The place where the Emperor's War Council controlled thousands of worlds. And now, the human fleet was heading directly toward it. "Contact the Citadel," Vorn ordered. The communications officer tried. No response. Again. Nothing. "Emergency Imperial Channel." Still nothing. Vorn's expression hardened. "Are we certain the command signal originated there?" The sensor officer nodded. "Yes, Admiral." "Could it be forged?" "No." "Could someone have stolen the authentication code?" The officer hesitated. "Technically." "Don't give me technically." He looked toward the commander. "Who has access to an Omega authorization?" The commander swallowed. "The Emperor, the High Council, the Imperial Defense Minister. And," he hesitated, "there is one more." "Who?" "The Directorate." Vorn's face changed. The Imperial Security Directorate was dissolved 12 years ago. Officially. Silence. Everyone understood what that meant. The organization had never truly disappeared. It had simply gone underground. A new transmission appeared. Not from humanity. From the Imperial Citadel. Every Varkesh ship received it simultaneously. A distorted voice spoke. "Admiral Vorn." Vorn stepped toward the console. "Identify yourself." A short laugh answered. "You already know." Vorn's eyes narrowed. "Director Carr." The voice became colder. "You were ordered to destroy the human vessel. I refused. You disobeyed Imperial command. I prevented the destruction of my fleet. You mistake obedience for weakness." Vorn clenched his fists. "You activated weapons inside my own ships. Necessary. You murdered Varkesh personnel. Acceptable losses." Vorn's expression became furious. "They were your soldiers. They were soldiers of the Empire." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent. Then the fleet commander spoke. "Admiral." Vorn looked at him. "What?" "If the Directorate controls the Imperial fleet." He didn't finish. Vorn understood. The war wasn't about humanity. It was about control of the Varkesh Empire. The Directorate had deliberately sent the fleet into human territory. They expected humanity to retaliate. They wanted a war, because a war would give them justification to seize emergency power. Vorn looked toward the human fleet. Thousands of ships continued moving toward the Citadel. "Captain Ward," he said. The communications officer opened a channel. Ward appeared. "You understand what they're doing?" Vorn said. "Yes." "They want you to attack the Empire." "Yes." "Then why are you going to the Citadel?" Ward looked directly at him. "Because someone needs to stop them." Vorn stared at the human captain. "You're going to attack our capital?" "No." Ward paused. "We're going to remove the people controlling your war." Vorn frowned. "What's the difference?" "The difference is that your civilians won't die." The statement stunned the bridge. Ward continued. "Your military infrastructure will be disabled." "Our defenses?" "Disabled." "Our weapons?" "Disabled." "Our fleet?" "Already neutralized." Vorn looked at the tactical display. His fleet's weapons were still locked. Its navigation systems remained compromised. The human armada had effectively taken control of the battlefield without destroying a single major warship. Ward spoke again. "Admiral, we need your help." Vorn looked surprised. "My help? You know the Citadel's defenses." "Yes." "You know their command structure." "Yes." "And you know where the civilians are." Vorn understood. "You want to enter the Citadel without killing anyone." "Exactly." The Admiral looked around the bridge. For decades, the Varkesh had considered humanity primitive. Too emotional. Too diplomatic. Too restrained. But now Vorn realized those traits had never been weaknesses. They had been choices. Humanity had the power to destroy. It simply preferred not to. Captain Ward. Yes. I'll give you the Citadel's internal defense map. Ward nodded. Thank you. But I have one condition. I'm listening. You don't kill the Emperor. Ward's expression changed. Why? Because I need him alive. For what? Vorn looked toward the stars. To make him answer for what he ordered. Ward nodded. Agreed. The human fleet accelerated. Thousands of ships disappeared into hyperspace. One after another. The Varkesh bridge watched them vanish. Then the tactical display suddenly updated. Human fleet. Arrival confirmed. Vorn's eyes widened. How long? The sensor officer looked at the timestamp. 30 seconds. Vorn stared. The Imperial Citadel was more than 12 light-years away. No fleet in Varkesh history had ever crossed that distance so quickly. Then every communication screen across the Varkesh flagship activated. The image showed the Imperial Citadel. But something was wrong. Its outer defense platforms were already going offline. One by one. Without explosions. Without debris. Without casualties. Human ships were appearing inside the defense perimeter. Not attacking. Simply disabling. The Directorate had expected a war. Instead, humanity had brought something far more terrifying. Precision. Then the Citadel's main doors opened. And a transmission came through. Director Carr spoke. Admiral Vorn. His voice was no longer confident. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Vorn looked at the human fleet approaching the Citadel. For the first time, he wondered if Carr was right. Because humanity had scanned one warship and discovered an empire's darkest secret. But the secret was about to become even worse. The Imperial Citadel had survived for 900 years. It had endured rebellions, civil wars, alien invasions, even the collapse of entire star systems. Its outer defense network contained more than 12,000 automated weapons. Its shield generators were powerful enough to protect a moon. Its internal security forces numbered nearly 2 million. No enemy had ever reached the inner command chamber. Until now, the human fleet arrived without firing a single shot. Thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace around the Citadel. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then the human fleet began its operation. One defense platform went offline. Then another. Then 10. Then 100. The Citadel's weapons simply stopped responding. Admiral Kale Vorn watched from the Varkesh flagship. How are they doing that? The sensor officer shook his head. We don't know. They aren't destroying anything. No. They're disabling everything. Yes. Vorn stared at the tactical display. The human operation was almost impossible to comprehend. No wasted movement. No unnecessary explosions. No indiscriminate attacks. Every action had one purpose. Remove the Citadel's ability to fight. The communications officer suddenly shouted. Admiral. What? We have a transmission from inside the Citadel. Put it through. A frightened Varkesh officer appeared. Admiral, we've lost the outer ring. Casualties? None. Vorn frowned. None. They're not killing anyone. The officer swallowed. They're cutting power to weapons, locking security doors, and disabling transport systems. Where are they now? The officer looked behind him. Moving toward the command sector. The transmission ended. Vorn leaned back. The human fleet had breached the most secure military installation in the Empire without killing a single soldier. Then a second transmission appeared. Director Carr. His face was no longer hidden. The man looked exhausted. You think this changes anything? Carr asked. Vorn stared at him. You started a war. I protected the Empire. You attacked humanity. I gave the Empire a chance to destroy its greatest threat. Vorn shook his head. You didn't know what humanity was capable of. Carr smiled. That was the point. Vorn frowned. What? Carr leaned toward the camera. We needed to know. Silence. What are you talking about? Carr's smile disappeared. For 50 years, we've suspected humanity was hiding military technology beyond our understanding. Vorn's eyes narrowed. And we needed a reason to force them to reveal it. The Admiral felt a chill. You sacrificed an entire fleet to make humanity show its hand. Carr's voice remained calm. Now we know. Vorn looked toward the human armada. Thousands of ships. Technology that had outmaneuvered the Varkesh without destroying them. The Directorate had wanted information, but Carr had made one mistake. He had assumed humanity had shown everything. The human fleet suddenly stopped. Every ship became motionless. The Citadel's remaining sensors began detecting something unusual. A massive energy signature was forming beyond the battlefield. Vorn stared. What is that? The sensor officer couldn't answer. The signature grew, larger, stronger, until it dwarfed the entire human fleet. Carr's expression changed. What did you do? Nobody answered. Then the stars themselves appeared to bend. Something emerged from hyperspace. It was enormous, far larger than the human dreadnoughts. Its hull stretched nearly 50 kilometers. Its armor was layered like a fortress. 6 massive engine cores burned behind it. And along its spine sat a weapon unlike anything the Varkesh had ever seen. The bridge became silent. Carr whispered, "No." Vorn looked at him. "You recognize it?" Carr shook his head. "No." "Then why are you afraid?" Carr stared at the enormous vessel. "Because that's not a warship." The Admiral frowned. "Then what is it?" Carr's face had gone pale. "A command platform." The massive human vessel moved forward. Every other human ship immediately changed formation around it. The fleet wasn't escorting the vessel. It was obeying it. The ship transmitted one message. Not to the Varkesh fleet. Not to the Citadel. To every world in the Varkesh Empire. The message was simple. Your war was never against humanity. A pause. Then another line appeared. It was against the people who controlled you. Across thousands of Varkesh worlds, citizens watched the message. For the first time, they saw the truth. The Directorate had ordered the attack. The Directorate had manipulated the fleet. The Directorate had attempted to provoke humanity into war. Then the human command platform transmitted the final message. Director KHAR. Surrender. Carr stared at the screen. You think I'll surrender? The human response came immediately. No. A second message appeared. We know you won't. Carr looked toward the command chamber doors. Suddenly, every light inside the Citadel turned off. Emergency lighting activated. Then the doors opened. Not because they were hacked. Because someone inside had unlocked them. A group of Varkesh soldiers entered. Their weapons were pointed at Carr. The Director stared at them. What are you doing? The soldiers did not answer. Their commander stepped forward. Director Carr. Carr's eyes narrowed. You will stand down. This is treason. No. The commander lowered his weapon slightly. This is the Empire choosing its own future. Carr looked around the chamber. For the first time, he realized the truth. The human fleet had never needed to conquer the Varkesh Empire. It only needed to reveal what was already broken. Then the command chamber doors opened again. Captain Elias Ward walked inside. Alone. Carr stared at him. You came here yourself? Ward nodded. Yes. Why? Ward looked directly at the Director. Because you wanted to see what humanity was capable of. He paused. Now you're going to see what we do when someone tries to destroy an entire civilization. Carr's face hardened. And what is that? Ward's answer was quiet. We give them a choice. The room went silent. Then Ward placed a small device on the table. Its display activated. A countdown appeared. 10 o'clock. Carr stared at it. What is this? Ward turned toward the soldiers. Your choice. Then he looked back at Carr. Surrender the Directorate. Or, Ward's eyes hardened. Humanity will expose everything you have done. The countdown began. 9:59. And across the galaxy, the Varkesh people started watching. The countdown continued. 9:41. Director Carr stared at the device on the table. Around him stood Varkesh soldiers. Behind them stood Captain Elias Ward. And beyond the Citadel's armored walls waited an entire human fleet. For the first time in his career, Carr had nowhere left to run. "You think exposing classified information will frighten me?" he asked. Ward shook his head. "No. Then what?" "We think it will frighten the people who trusted you." Carr's expression hardened. "You don't understand the Empire." Ward looked at him calmly. "That's where you're wrong." He activated the device. A holographic projection appeared above the table. It showed thousands of secret documents, military orders, hidden fleet movements, political assassinations, false flag operations, entire wars deliberately prolonged by the Directorate. The soldiers stared at the information. One of them whispered, "This can't be real." Carr immediately shouted, "Propaganda!" Ward didn't react. The hologram changed. A classified recording appeared. Carr was younger, standing in the same command chamber, speaking to senior officials. "We cannot defeat humanity militarily." The recording continued. "They possess technological advantages we don't fully understand." Another official asked, "Then why provoke them?" Carr's younger face answered, "To force them to reveal their capabilities." The recording ended. Silence filled the room. The soldiers looked at Carr. The director's face remained emotionless. "That recording is fabricated." Ward activated another, then dozens. Every recording told the same story. For decades, the Directorate had manipulated the Varkesh Empire. It had sabotaged peace negotiations. It had secretly attacked neutral worlds. It had blamed those attacks on neighboring civilizations. It had created enemies so the military could receive more power. The Varkesh Empire had not been surrounded by enemies. It had been surrounded by lies. The countdown reached 7:18. One soldier lowered his weapon. "Director!" Carr turned toward him. "What? Is it true?" Carr said nothing. The soldier's expression changed. "That means..." He looked around the room. "All those wars..." Another soldier stepped backward. "We killed millions because you ordered it." Carr's voice became cold. "We did what was necessary." The soldier stared at him. "For what?" "To protect the Empire." "No." The soldier raised his weapon again. "You protected yourself." Carr's face twisted with anger. "You know nothing about leadership." Captain Ward interrupted. "Neither did you." Carr looked toward him. Ward continued. "You believed fear was the only thing holding your empire together." He gestured toward the holographic records. "But fear doesn't create loyalty." The countdown continued. 5:02. Carr suddenly laughed. Ward looked at him. "What? You think this is over?" Carr's expression changed. "You still don't understand what you're dealing with." He turned toward the main window. "Humanity thinks it has discovered the truth." Ward remained silent. "But you haven't." Carr touched the command console. A hidden system activated. The citadel began shaking. The Varkesh soldiers looked around. "What did you activate?" Carr smiled. "Something the Directorate built long before humanity arrived." The tactical display suddenly showed hundreds of signals appearing throughout Varkesh space. Hidden weapons, buried stations, dormant fleets, secret facilities. The Directorate had prepared for this moment. Vorn watched from his flagship. His face became pale. "That's not possible." The sensor officer looked at him. "There are thousands of installations." Vorn stared at the display. "How many ships?" The officer swallowed. "Approximately 6,000. The bridge went silent. The human fleet had been expecting resistance. But not this. Then Captain Ward's voice came through. "Admiral Vorn." "Yes." "Don't engage them." Vorn frowned. "They're activating across the Empire." "I know." "Then what are you going to do?" Ward's answer was calm. "We're going to show you why we scanned one ship." Vorn stared. "What does that mean?" Ward didn't answer. The human command platform moved. This massive hull rotated. The weapon along its spine began charging. Every human ship moved aside. The entire battlefield cleared. The Varkesh fleet watched. The Directorate's hidden fleets activated across thousands of systems. But the human weapon wasn't aimed at them. It was aimed at empty space. A single beam fired. There was no explosion, no shockwave. Instead, space itself appeared to split. A vast network of glowing lines spread across the stars. Vorn's sensor display went insane. What is that? The sensor officer stared. It's mapping. Mapping what? Everything. The human weapon was not destroying the hidden fleets. It was exposing them. Every secret base, every concealed ship, every underground command center, every hidden weapons facility. All of them became visible. Across the galaxy, Varkesh citizens watched their secret military infrastructure appear on public networks. The Directorate's greatest weapon had become its greatest weakness. Carr stared at the display. No! Ward looked at him. You wanted humanity to reveal its technology. He paused. So we revealed yours instead. The countdown reached 0:30. Carr suddenly looked toward the soldiers. Kill him. Nobody moved. That's an order. Still nothing. The commander stepped forward. Your authority is gone. Carr stared at him. Then he looked at Ward. You think humanity has won? Ward shook his head. No. The countdown reached 0:10. Ward looked toward the main display. We haven't won. 0:05. We've just stopped the war. 0:03. Carr's face changed. Wait. 0:02. The human command platform suddenly detected something. A new signal. Not from the Directorate. Not from the Varkesh. Something far beyond their territory. Something ancient. Something enormous. 0:01. The entire citadel went silent. Then a message appeared on every screen. Not in Varkesh language. Not in human language. But somehow, everyone understood it. We have been watching. Ward slowly looked toward the stars. The human fleet stopped moving. For the first time since the battle began, Captain Ward looked afraid. Because humanity had not been the only civilization watching the Varkesh fleet. Something else had been watching humanity. And now, it had finally decided to speak. The message remained on every screen. We have been watching. No one moved. Not the Varkesh soldiers inside the citadel. Not Admiral Vorn aboard the flagship. Not even the thousands of human warships surrounding the planet. For several seconds, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Captain Elias Ward stared at the message. Who are you? No answer. He repeated the question. Identify yourself. The stars outside the citadel suddenly changed. One by one, distant stars disappeared. Not exploded. Not extinguished. They simply vanished. The sensor officer aboard Vorn's flagship screamed. Admiral! What? Multiple systems are losing stellar signatures. How many? 20. He checked again. 40. Another pause. 70. Vorn's face hardened. Is this an attack? The sensor officer shook his head. No. Then what is it? I don't know. Suddenly, a new message appeared. We did not come for the Varkesh. Ward stared at the display. Another line appeared. We came for humanity. Every human ship went completely silent. Vorn noticed something strange. The human fleet wasn't moving. For the first time since he had encountered the HSS Resolute, he saw uncertainty in the human command network. Captain Ward, Vorn transmitted. Ward answered immediately. Yes. What is happening? We don't know. The admission shocked Vorn. You don't know? No. Ward looked toward the enormous command platform. Whatever is out there has technology beyond our current sensor models. Vorn stared at the stars. How long have they been watching you? Ward was silent. Then he answered. Possibly centuries. The bridge became silent. Vorn remembered the first scan. The human warship. The strange armor. The impossible readings. He suddenly understood. Humanity hadn't been hiding its strength from the galaxy. Humanity had been hiding it from something else. A massive shadow appeared beyond the citadel. It was difficult to describe. There was no clear hull, no visible engines, no recognizable structure. It looked like a section of space had been removed from reality. Then thousands of lights appeared around it. The sensor officer whispered, "That's a fleet." Vorn looked at the display. "How many ships?" The officer's voice trembled. "We can't count them. Estimate. Millions." Vorn's blood ran cold. Millions of vessels surrounded the edge of the system. Not thousands. Not hundreds of thousands. Millions. The human fleet began moving. But instead of attacking, it formed a defensive wall around the Varkesh citadel. Vorn stared. "You're protecting us?" Ward answered, "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're not the target anymore." Vorn looked toward the impossible fleet. "Who are they?" Ward didn't answer. A new transmission arrived. This time it was a voice. Deep, mechanical, ancient. It spoke in perfect human language. "Humanity." Ward stepped closer to the communication console. "Identify yourself." "We are the Continuum." The name appeared across every display. Vorn frowned. "What is the Continuum?" The voice answered, "The civilization that existed before your stars were young." Silence. "We observed your species." The voice continued, "You were primitive." The Varkesh officers looked at each other. "You fought among yourselves." The voice continued, "You destroyed your own worlds." Ward remained silent. "But then you changed." The human captain's expression tightened. "You began looking outward." The voice became louder. "You reached the stars." Then the final statement appeared. "And we became concerned." Ward finally spoke. "You've been monitoring us." "Yes." "Why?" "Because humanity is the first species to develop the ability to damage the structure of space itself." Ward's face changed. Vorn suddenly remembered the human command platform. The weapon that had mapped hidden Varkesh facilities. The impossible hyperspace travel. The technology that made fleets disappear. The Continuum continued. "You have crossed a threshold." Ward asked, "What threshold?" The answer came immediately. "The threshold between civilization," pause, "and threat." Every human ship raised its weapons. The Continuum fleet did the same. Vorn watched the two armadas face each other. Humanity had defeated the Varkesh Directorate. It had exposed an entire empire. It had scanned one warship and turned a fleet into a helpless spectator. But now, humanity had finally encountered something that wasn't impressed. The Continuum transmitted one final message. "Surrender your advanced technology." Ward shook his head. "No." The reply came instantly. "Then humanity will be contained." Ward looked around the bridge. His officers waited. He knew the numbers. Millions of enemy ships. Unknown technology. Unknown weapons. An enemy that had been watching humanity for centuries. Yet Ward smiled. Not because he wasn't afraid. Because he finally understood why the Continuum had made one critical mistake. They had watched humanity, but they had never fought humanity. "Admiral Vorn," Ward said. Vorn answered, "Yes. I need your fleet." The Varkesh admiral stared at him. "You're asking us to fight that?" "No." Ward looked at the impossible fleet. "I'm asking you to stay alive." Vorn frowned. "Why?" Ward's smile disappeared. "Because we're about to show them what they should have learned from the first scan." The human command platform began charging its main weapon. But this time, the weapon wasn't aimed at the enemy fleet. It was aimed at the space between the stars. Ward gave one final order. "Open the old gate." Every human officer froze. Vorn stared at the display. "What old gate?" Ward didn't answer. Because something enormous had just begun opening behind the human fleet. Something the Continuum had apparently never seen. And for the first time, their fleet began retreating. The Continuum fleet was retreating. Millions of ships. An armada that had watched civilizations rise and disappear. an intelligence that had existed before most stars were born. For the first time in its history, it was afraid. Admiral Cale Vorn stared at the impossible structure opening behind the human fleet. "What is that?" Captain Elias Ward didn't answer immediately. The structure continued expanding. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a portal. It was something far larger. A ring of artificial space stretched across millions of kilometers, its surface covered with geometric patterns that seemed to move between dimensions. Vorn's sensors couldn't understand it. "Is that a weapon?" Ward shook his head. "No. A gateway? Not exactly." "Then what?" Ward looked toward the structure. "It's a boundary." Vorn frowned. "Between what?" Ward finally turned toward him. "Between the part of the galaxy we live in." He paused. "And the part humanity was never supposed to enter." The Continuum fleet suddenly transmitted. "Close the gate." Ward smiled. "No. You do not understand what lies beyond it." Ward's expression became serious. "Neither do you." The gate opened completely. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then something emerged. One human vessel. Only one. It was smaller than the massive command platform. Smaller than the dreadnoughts. But the moment it appeared, every Continuum ship stopped moving. The Varkesh sensors began screaming. Vorn stared at the data. "Admiral." "What?" The sensor officer could barely speak. "That ship has no measurable mass." Vorn looked at the screen. "What?" "It exists." He swallowed. "But our sensors can't determine how." Ward spoke quietly. "We call it the horizon." Vorn stared at the vessel. "What can it do?" Ward looked toward the Continuum fleet. "Open doors." The horizon moved. It didn't accelerate. It simply disappeared. Then it appeared inside the Continuum formation. Millions of enemy ships suddenly lost power. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Disconnected. One by one, their engines shut down. Their weapons went offline. Their navigation systems stopped. The Continuum transmitted immediately. "What have you done?" Ward answered. "Nothing." The Continuum fleet began activating backup systems. The horizon disappeared again. Then another section of the fleet went dark. Vorn finally understood. The human ship wasn't attacking the Continuum. It was removing their ability to fight. The same thing humanity had done to the Varkesh. Only on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. The Continuum voice became distorted. "You cannot control the fabric of space." Ward smiled. "We're not controlling it." He looked at the horizon. "We're listening to it." The Continuum fleet stopped. Silence spread across the system. Then the ancient civilization transmitted one final question. "Why?" Ward answered. "Because you made the same mistake everyone makes." "What mistake?" "You scanned us." The message repeated. "We scanned humanity." Ward nodded. "And you assumed the scan showed everything." The horizon's engines began glowing. Behind it, thousands of human ships activated. Then millions of signals appeared. Not human, not Varkesh, ancient civilizations. Species that had disappeared. Civilizations that had survived beyond the known galaxy. All connected to humanity. Vorn stared in disbelief. "How many allies do you have?" Ward shook his head. "They aren't allies." "Then what are they?" "Witnesses." Vorn didn't understand. Ward continued. "Humanity spent centuries thinking we were alone." He looked toward the Continuum fleet. "Then we discovered the truth." "What truth?" "That the galaxy wasn't empty." The human command platform transmitted a message across the stars. "Humanity does not seek control." A second message followed. "We seek the right to exist." Then another. "And we will not surrender that right." The Continuum fleet began retreating. Millions of ships disappeared into distant hyperspace corridors. But before leaving, the ancient civilization transmitted one final message. "We will remember humanity." Ward looked at the fading fleet. "Good." Vorn stared at him. "Why?" Ward turned. "Because next time they see us." He paused. "They won't make the mistake of thinking one human warship represents all of humanity." The HSS Resolute slowly moved forward. The ship that had started everything. The ship that the Varkesh had scanned. The ship that had caused an entire fleet to panic. Vorn looked at the vessel one final time. He remembered the first scan. 300 layers of armor. Impossible energy readings. Unknown technology. He finally understood what those readings really meant. The human warship hadn't been hiding weapons. It had been hiding history. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for enemies the galaxy didn't even know existed. The Varkesh Empire had thought it was hunting one human warship. The Directorate had thought it was manipulating humanity. The Continuum had thought it could contain humanity. All of them had made the same mistake. They judged humanity by what it showed them, not by what it chose to hide. Captain Ward opened a final transmission to the Varkesh fleet. Admiral Vorn. Yes, Captain. Your fleet is free to leave. Vorn looked at the human ships. You're not going to demand anything? No. Not territory? No. Technology? No. Military surrender? Ward shook his head. We didn't come here to conquer you. Vorn smiled faintly. Then why did you come? Ward looked toward the stars. Because you crossed our border. A pause. And because you scanned one human warship. Vorn laughed quietly. I suppose that was a mistake. Ward smiled. The biggest one. The human fleet began disappearing into hyperspace. One ship after another. Until only the HSS Resolute remained. The same ship. The same silent vessel. The same warship that had terrified an entire fleet without firing a single shot. Then it vanished. Admiral Vorn looked at the empty stars. He knew the Varkesh Empire would never forget what happened. From that day forward, a new law was written into Imperial military doctrine. Contained only one sentence. Never assume a human warship is alone. And beneath it, someone added another line. Especially if it allows you to scan it. Because the galaxy had finally learned the truth. The most terrifying thing about humanity wasn't its weapons. It wasn't its fleets. It wasn't even its technology. It was the fact that humanity had the power to destroy and still chose restraint until someone gave it a reason not to.